Hey, Skyline Brokers, it's me, Eric Johnson, your designated broker. And today's video is going to be, I'm just going to show you how I write an offer using Matrix and Transaction Desk. Anyway, so bear with me. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to jump right into it. Hey, very good. I'm going to blow this up a little bit here for you. There we go. I want you to be able to see it on your screen. So this is just a kind of a typical listing out there, right? I kind of just grabbed a random listing. And so here's what I came up with. It doesn't matter what the listing is. I am going to pay attention to a handful of things here. This is already sold, but um, I basically grabbed a dot on the map. This house listed for 365,000, ultimately sold for 350. Again, not worried about that. But I would do, if it was my buyer I was working with, I would do a little bit of research to see if I couldn't uh, verify for them that that 365 is a good price, or maybe I'll think, hey, we should offer a little less. It depends on a lot of different things, but I do a buyer's CMA on that home. So I've done that at this point, and now I want to read through some of the basics of the listing just to see if there's anything I need to know as far as things I'm going to put into my offer. So here we see that they want to use title forward for the title and Chicago title for escrow, and here's the name of the closer that they would like to choose. So I'm going to keep that in mind because that'll come in important during writing my offer. Um, and here we, just reading through the listing. One of the next important things I want to do is I want to look and see what appliances stay. Here they've got the dryer, refrigerator, the stove, and the washer. So there's no dishwasher apparently. That's one of the more common things to say. Or there's no microwave. There's only the four things that they are offering with the property. Next thing I want to do is look and see, is this on septic? It is. It's on septic. This house happens to be on septic in Pierce County. It is on, uh, let's see, the water source is public. That's important. I don't need to do a well addendum. So those are the basic things that I'm going to be looking at here. As far as the listing goes, now I want to look and see what the included documents are going to be that the listing broker included with their listing. So we got a legal description. That's good. That's absolutely mandatory. We've got a Form 17 seller disclosure. That's great. Nice to have that up front. We've got a FERPTA form. I'm going to open that because I need to know what's on that FERPTA form right now. And that says, I am not a non-resident alien for purposes of U.S. taxation. All I need to know is the am not part. They've also included a lead-based paint form, utilities form, pre-inspection, but we're not doing a pre-inspection, so I don't need that. The preliminary commitment is valuable to my buyer, but it's not going to be part of the offer necessarily. And then we've got a listing flyer. That definitely don't need that to be part of our offer. Okay, so that gives me an idea of what I'm looking for here. Next thing I want to do is click on this little icon here, right? It says transaction desk. It's a little, looks like a scroll with a pencil. This is going to open the MLS and it'll automatically move me into transaction desk. And it's actually going to pull some data for this specific home. I'm going to choose, we've got some templates here, and I'm going to choose a residential transaction. And that's going to automatically include a lot of forms, not necessarily all the forms I need, and most likely quite a few that I don't need. And I'm going to use the wizard. So I click on create. Now you're going to see it's going to open it up. Here we go. Here's the listing. Here's the address of the property. I'm going to put in my client's name, and they're jokingly it's Bob and Barb Buyer. So I'm just going to put in Buyer. Um, so um, Here we looked through to make sure things filled in, and they did. How much it says? What's my offer going to be? And in this case, we know it's sold for 350, and that's fine. We'll go ahead and put that in. If we go back to the listing, by the way, one of the things I didn't check is they're offering 2.25% compensation, and I won't get into a debate about what is the right amount of commission. To be perfectly honest, uh, it's if I get 2.25 on 350,000, probably going to be doing okay. Yeah, I'm not going to get rich doing it, but if I do one of those, a month, and I'll be doing okay. So I'm not going to sweat over that. But if any of you ever want to offer something different than what the listing broker is offering on the SOC, please contact your manager because we want to make sure you're doing it the right way, where you actually don't jeopardize your client or your own pay. So here we go. Next, we're going to move into next. And this is going to ask purchase and sale agreement. Today is November 8th. That's the day we're going to write this and the day we're going to be presenting the offer. My offer is going to expire on the 9th. That's tomorrow. That'll be at 9 p.m. tomorrow night. They have to respond if they want to accept my offer exactly as is. If they're countering me, they can respond later than that. We don't have mutual acceptance. Closing date. I have called my client's lender and had a good conversation with them because I wanted to find out a few things about my client and what they're going to be doing financing wise. Make sure that they are pre-approved in a good way and ready to get rolling here. And also found out that he thinks he can get them closed in 30 days. He's talked to an underwriter. He feels good about that. So we're going to go ahead and go for a month from now. I wouldn't necessarily do a month. We're starting to see it push out a little more. We're starting to see more 45-day closings, by the way. So always talk to the lender and make sure you're good to go there. Okay, so this will be on Friday, December 8th, and my client wants to move in that weekend. So they want to be there so they can get their Christmas tree set up the next week for Christmas. Um, so we'll just leave it there, and the seller isn't asking us for any kind of a rent back, so that's good. Now we click on next. So here we can see the names of various parties here. I need to add my buyer. So got Bob. Oops. We're going to give him a fake email address. So actually, I'm just going to give him my email address. So if somehow I accidentally sent, it would go to me and no harm done. Save that. Now, he has a wife, so we're going to include her as well. And she is also a buyer. We're going to call her Barb a buyer. Okay, so that's it. We really only need their name and email address. That'll we could include more, but you don't need to. That's enough. That's going to be enough to get you rolling on the things that we're going to want to do. Next, it brings up the forms. So I'm going to look these forms over. I already know I don't need a 22J because the listing broker has included one. So I'm going to click over here on the three dots next to it and click on delete. They've also included a utility addendum. I don't need that. So I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. And I'm going to leave a couple of forms here that I might need, but won't necessarily be using right away. I definitely don't need FERPTA because they included that. We looked at it. Okay, so there's some I'm going to be using a little later on. So um, by the way, buyer's agency agreement, it's going to be called a buyer's service agreement, and it's going to be changing to a plain old Form 41. It's going to be mandatory on every transaction you write after January or from January 1st on in 2024. So you might want to get used to using that one. For this transaction, we don't need it. Okay, same thing with the selling firm commission. So I'm just kind of cleaning out some stuff here so that I can keep my file as clean as possible. Okay, getting rid of the forms that I'm definitely not going to use. I don't always do this, but it's something that I just want you to see that you can do it because different people are going to have a different level of what they need to do to feel organized as they write up their offer. Okay, so here we go. We've got the basics now. At this point, I'm actually going to start writing my offer from right here in the forms. So we'll click on Form 21, the title. It's going to open it up. And it's going to fill in, a lot of stuff is going to fill in. We've got Bob and Barb Buyer in there. We're going to put them down as a married couple. And here we've got the tax parcel number. That's great. All of this imported when we did it through Transaction Desk, which is really nice. We know that they're including a stove. We know they're including a fridge, the washer, and the dryer. They didn't include a dishwasher or a microwave or anything else. Now, this is a place where if there's something that it isn't really clear to you as to whether or not it's included with the house, but it's important that it stay with the house, then you might want to check this box and say something. So a great example of that is the air conditioner that's in the window in the primary bedroom. So I might just say, that way my client will know that they're going to get that air conditioner. Here it says attached TVs. If there's a big screen TV in the house and your client would like it, no harm in asking. If the seller counters you there, that's what you can do. So here's our offer amount. You'll notice it's written out numerically and longhand. I want you to be in the habit of doing that too. And my client, for earnest money, they have $5,000 that they're willing to put at risk. And I call it at risk because earnest money is always somewhat at risk. If your client does something that breaches the contract, they could lose that earnest money. It also needs to be money that is liquid. They have to be able to access it within a couple of days. So here, the delivery day. We have to choose when we want our client to turn it into escrow, our buyer. Um, it defaults at 2 days if you put nothing here. Those of you who have worked with me for a while know I don't care much for defaults, so I would rather put something in here. Now I'm gonna put in 3 days. So today is Wednesday. That if the offer gets accepted tomorrow on Thursday, then my client's going to have until Tuesday because it's 5 or less days is business days, does not include weekends or holidays. So 3 days would put us to Tuesday. By the end of the business day, they're going to need to turn this money into escrow. Okay. The earnest money is going to be held by closing agent. That's the same as an escrow company. Okay. Buyer brokerage firm, never. Skyline does not have a trust account to which you can deposit funds. So we don't hold those funds. Promissory notes, I'm not a big fan of those. They do have some purpose sometimes in certain circumstances. If you think you're going to be using one for some reason, I do recommend you talk to your manager first. They will make your offer appear weaker. And they don't necessarily get your client out of paying the earnest money if they were to terminate prior to for a non-contractually legal reason prior to depositing that earnest money. That's a whole different topic, but default forfeiture of earnest money always. Seller's election of remedies means that they could sue your buyer for even for more than your earnest money. So never select that. You represent your buyer. You want to take as good a care of them as you can. I don't remember the name of the title company. I'm going to go back to my matrix, and it was Title Forward. And it was also a Chicago title for the closing agent, which is escrow again. And you notice here it says company right below the word Chicago. We want to put the company name in here. And over here, we had a person's name. I think that was it. Um, um, Here it automatically filled in the closing date for us. We're going to take possession on closing. We are going to ask for Form 22K to be done. Charges and assessments levied before but due after closing. I don't think there's going to be any on this property, but there's no HOA. It doesn't appear to be part of any type of special district or anything like that. But you never know. We're going to go ahead and check the prepaid in full by seller at closing. That means if there is some type of a pending charge or a pending assessment out there, the seller is going to have to pay for it. If the seller were to counter you and say, no, I want the buyer to assume it by checking this box, that gives you an opportunity to engage in conversation with the listing broker and find out what exactly why is the seller doing this? Is there something out there lurking about in the way of a charge or assessment? Next one, seller citizenship. This is why I wanted to look at the FERPTA form, because now I can check the is not box. Seller is not a foreign person for purposes of U.S. taxation. It said are not on the FERPTA form, but that's okay. Same thing. Information verification period. This is where you can actually, if you can find something in the marketing of the property or the way the property has been presented by the seller or the listing broker, um, and it affects the value of the property. It has material. It's a material inaccuracy in the marketing. Then you can terminate at that point. I'm going to give us 5 days to look at that because basically we're going to see it during the inspection, and that's when we're going to make our decision. And I'm going to ask for a 5-day inspection. The buyer is represented by me. I'm the buyer broker. Seller is represented by the listing broker. You're with Skyline, never check these middle boxes. If you are working with an unrepresented party on the other side of a transaction, definitely check the unrepresented box, but you will not do dual agency. And then the buyer brokerage firm, they're offering 2.25. I'm going to pay as I'm opting for them to pay me as they've offered here. And that adds transparency. My buyer will see now that I'm getting 2.25% at closing on this. All right, the addenda. My client needs financing, so we're going to start with that. My client is, actually on every transaction, I want you to use Form 22D. Optional clauses. There's one in there that protects you, so I want you to use that. In this case, they're providing a 22J, but we're going to use it. 22K, same thing. You'll notice FERPTA is not on here, 22E. That's because it's not a transactional negotiated form. In theory, these things have to be agreed upon by all parties. FERPTA is not one that has to be agreed upon by all parties, so it's not part of this. So next, we're going to go to the septic, and this is Pierce County. So we're going to be using a special Pierce County septic. That's the 22WW. And there's not a lot other going on as far as it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our inspection and add that. I'm going to throw in one more thing. This is because it's coming up a lot lately. And that is a situation where you are trying to close on a Friday and the title, everything's good. It's been shipped for recording, and the county is understaffed and can't get the job done. We're seeing it a lot in King County. It's happened also in Snohomish and Pierce, though. So we're going to use a form. It's the 22. Oh, interesting. It is not posted on here. So it's the 22Y recording. Okay, so that's a form I'm going to want to add to my transaction so that it'll, even if the county can't stamp it as recorded on Friday, December 8th, it will still, for all intents, be closed on Friday, December 8th, and my buyer can still move in on the 9th. Okay, so we'll write that one in. And otherwise, that's going to be everything we need for this transaction. There's nothing else that I'm going to be asking for. Okay, if there were other things going on, then we might. So this is a pretty complete list. So I've included the whoops, I clicked on one wrong. There it is. So these are the forms that I intend to have attached to my offer. If I don't have them attached, I'm out of luck, even though I've listed them here. The other side of that is that if I do attach a form that is not listed here, it is still part of the offer. Okay, so we are now done with our purchase and sale agreement. I'm going to make a note here of make sure that there's a firm document email address and a listing broker email address, because I will send everything I do to both of those email addresses. So at this point, I'm going to move on to my next document. So I'm going to hit save and exit. 22A, I have talked to my lender. I've learned a lot about my client and what they need. We know they can close in 30 days. They're going to be doing a conventional first mortgage. They're not doing anything special. They're going to be putting 20% down. So you'll want to make sure you get this figured out right, though. Talk to your lender, find out what you're going to need there. And then I'm going to fill in some other things that have blanks. And this one is the 5 days. I want my buyer to be aware of it. So filling in the blank makes my buyer actually read this line and see it with a little more importance. So we're putting in 5 days for them to apply for their mortgage. This next section, always it says that if you select A or B, A, if neither is selected. I see a lot of them where this is completely blank. I will guarantee your buyers don't read it if it's blank. So please check a box. Okay, and I've talked to my lender, and he feels very confident that underwriting can be complete in 24 days, but not 21. So I'm going to put in 24 here because I want to protect my buyer, give them plenty of time so they don't have to make a decision that they might have to waive their financing prior to their ability to be ready to do so. And I also want them, no matter what happens, even if they waive even if they're forced to waive under this section 2A, waive their financing, I want them to still be able to fall back on the appraisal if it doesn't appraise for some reason. I think it will. I've done my mini CMA on this property, and the offer we're making is great. All right, so then we'll move through. My client is not asking for any loan provisions. Okay, so we're going to skip that section. And essentially, we are done with this form. So I'm going to hit save and exit. There's nothing else to fill in. Optional clauses. Always check the first box. Says the listing broker and buyer broker make no representations concerning the size of the property, square footage, encroachments, easements, etc. That protects you. So it's really important you check that box. You're typically not going to check either box in the title section unless the second section is if you want to do a survey. The first section is that you're okay with getting a much less comprehensive title search by the title company. Now, in this case, yes, I do want the seller to clean the property, take out all the trash and debris and rubbish. Um, if they were to not do so, it just means that my buyer could um, sue them or hopefully get reimbursed. But if they couldn't get reimbursed, they could sue them, small claims court, and get their bills paid. Personal property. This keeps the buyer, or excuse me, the seller from walking up and knocking on your door 30 days after closing and saying, "Hey, I left my lawnmower on out back. I want to go get it," and you've already sold it through offering. They don't have any right to it at that point. So check that personal property box. Um, you know, unless um, there's nothing on the property, I guess that would be one reason not to. But in general, protect your buyer so that they are not stuck with a bunch of stuff that they don't want. Utilities, this is where you are going with what you've been told. It's on a public water main. It's got a septic. Let's see, does it say that what's its energy source? Let's look here. It's got electric and natural gas is what they're stating, and I want them to say that in the offer as well. We don't care about a hardwired phone anymore, right? Cable is very important because it may have the internet. So plus my client wants to be able to enjoy some TV. So next one, new construction, because it says that, we'll skip that entirely. Leased property. There was nothing on the listing about any leased property. And when I showed the property, I didn't see a propane tank or any kind of security system or satellite dish. So I'm going to assume there is no leased property. But if you saw something that appeared that it was maybe leased, and that would be, the satellite dishes, propane tanks, almost always security systems usually uh, the 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 lease usually doesn't go with the new buyer, but it's worth looking into. So if you see any of those items, then go ahead and check this box and make sure that your buyer gets copies of all the leases so they can see what it is that they're going to have to do. Um, Interestingly, on our Form 21, there's a thing that says that any leased or encumbered property must be paid off prior to closing. So that will work in your buyer's favor as well. This particular house was not on an HOA property. It's just something out in the country, like Puyallup up there and everything. But so there's no HOA. I don't need to check this box. If I don't know if there's an HOA, the safe move is to go ahead and check the box because it says if the property is subject to homeowners association. If you don't know, then the if is very valid. But I do know for a fact this one is not on an HOA. We're not going to get any documents. I may as well not even mess with it. Same thing with number 9. 10, I haven't been told about any excluded items. And home warranty. So personally, I always provide a home warranty. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use Fidelity. And I'm going to pay for that. So I will just say that here. So at that point, I don't have anything to put in other on this one. So I'm going to hit save and exit. And we've got the title addendum. This form, if you leave it blank, it is perfectly fine. But I just want to make you aware that typically you want to not not have the buyer on the clock until they've actually received it. So you want to click on the date of buyer's receipt of preliminary commitment instead of from mutual acceptance. Because what if you never got it? Your clock runs out 5 days after mutual acceptance anyway. And again, I like to fill in my dates. So I'm going to fill in both of these with the defaults, but Again, that brings it to my buyer's attention a little bit. And that's it. That's all we need to do on that form. 22Y recording, I mentioned that earlier, so I'm just going to show it to you real quick. All it does is it changes the definition of closing. So that's all it's doing is we don't have to fill anything in here. We're not going to do a general addendum. We are going to do an inspection. Here we go. So I always want my buyer to have the opportunity to do a sewer scope. So we check May. The inspector I work with does have a sewer scope guy on staff. You may want to check with your inspector to find out if they do, and if not, can they recommend somebody to do that for you? If there's a lot of trees on the property, if it's an older property, you could have tree roots that have encroached upon the sewer pipes, which can cause them to clog and cause them to back up into the house, which is never a pretty thing. It could also cause them to, they could get crushed. So having a sewer scope is pretty valuable on a lot of properties because it could save your buyer, $10 to $25,000 in sewer line repairs. And if the sewer line is on their property, they are responsible for it. As soon as it goes to the main, then it's the county or the city that's responsible. All right, we're going to do a 5-day inspection. And we're not going through all the language here. We're just going through the blanks. Okay, so we're going to do a 5-day inspection. Um, I want to check this box that if my buyer um, wants a wants to do an additional inspection. Maybe there's something going on with the plumbing or a roof or electrical, and we need to get an expert out to look at it. That's an additional inspection. So we're going to check this third box. You could strategically, this is usually something a seller might do instead, and that's where the seller can request that they receive a copy of the report or a portion of the report. Hopefully you all know I'm going to add this quick warning. It says here, if buyer provides any portion of the inspection report to the seller without seller's prior written consent, the inspection contingency shall conclusively be deemed waived. So don't you send any portion of the inspection report or the whole inspection report to the buyer. You can quote things from the report when talking to the listing broker. You can ask for specific things on your inspection response without copying the exact wording of the inspection report, but you can certainly use the language here. You have to be able to describe what's wrong. So that's okay. I don't want you to be scared here. Just don't include any part there. You've copied and pasted a part of the report or sending over the actual entirety of the report. Just don't do that unless you've got one of these two boxes checked, or the seller has provided you with a form 35C, the C standing for consent. Additional inspections, we're going to give them 5 days to do that. So again, that's that roofer, plumber, electrician, foundation guy. It could be anything where your inspector says, there's something up here, but I can't figure it out. You should have somebody else look at it. That's what the additional inspection is. We get an automatic 5 days. If we say that we're using it, then we get to use that. We're going to give the seller, it defaults at 3 days. We're going to give them 3 days to respond to whatever we ask for on the inspection. And then we're going to have an additional 3 days once they say what they are willing to do. And as far as repairs go, it says 3 days prior to closing date. My buyer is going to be doing a walkthrough somewhere 5 days before closing. So I would like the repairs to be done prior to that. So I'm actually going to put in 6 days here because that way the repairs can be done in time that my buyer will see them when they do their walkthrough. We're not going to do a neighborhood review. My clients have already been around the block here. That's really for people who are coming in from out of town and haven't had a chance to really see the neighborhood. They love the house. They want to write an offer on it right now, but they're going to come back tonight. They're going to come back tomorrow morning. They're just going to check things out. This could be an out for them. Most sellers don't like it when you check this box, but that's tough. If you check it, it means that your buyer needs to have a chance to check it out a little bit. And usually there's a good reason for that. I'm gonna hit save. And now there's one more form. It's not going to be part of our offer, but I want to include it anyway. And that is the legal notice to buyer. Because, and I'll have to fill in here, address, let's see. And so there is a seller disclosure on this property, and I'm going to be providing it to my client. I want them to read this additional little blurb about their rights under the Seller Disclosure Act of Washington. There is a septic system on this property. Oh, that's the one I didn't look at yet. It was the 22WW. We'll get back to that in a second. There is a septic system. I want them to read this because if for any reason they have to close without the property, without the property passing its septic inspection, they have rights. I want them to know about that. There is no resale certificate or public offering statement. There's no HOA. We're not making an offer above the list price. So that's all we need now. Okay, so I'm going to have my buyer sign this later on as well. It's basically there to protect you so that you can guarantee that your buyer has been told everything. So now I need to add a form. There is no septic form here. So we're going to go in here and we're going to go, whoops. There's the Pierce County septic addendum. It's 22WW. We're going to add that. Click add. And there it is. And it's mostly, we're going to go with defaults, but like I say, I like to fill in the blank on defaults because I want people to be aware of them. So the seller has 10 days to uh, go ahead and get their septic evaluated. And then my buyer is going to have 3 days to review that report when they get it. And then they will, they're going to have to give notice that they are terminating because of that within 3 days as well. And then the seller is going to have 3 days to respond if we say that there's a problem we want the seller to fix. And then same thing, if there's been any maintenance reports, we want them. And I'm just, like I say, filling in the defaults. You could strategically fill in different dates depending on the circumstances. I'm gonna hit save and exit. Okay, I am now going to move on to next because I filled in the forms I'm going to be using. And I'm going to look at the documents. So here we've got legal description, Form 17, 22E, J, K. Some of the others don't matter. So again, we'll eliminate them. All right, now I say done. And now I'm going to go over here to the right-hand side and I'm going to click on forms again. So I want to check the forms that I need. So I'm going to check 21, 22A, 22D, title, 22Y recording, inspection, and here's our septic form. These are going to be the basic forms I'm going to ask my client to sign. So now I click on this little basket. Some people will go over here and click on signings and create it that way. I do it from the basket, and then I click on the little pen here. All right, and I now am ready to start this process. I need my signers, add participants. I am going to have to sign because there's a 22J involved. So I'll add me. Okay, and now I'm going to add some more participants. So I'm going to add from transaction. And here we're going to find Bob and Barb. Okay. We're going to map them now too, because I want their signatures to go in the right places. Oh, okay. They've already been mapped. We've got Bob and Barb are already buyers. So that's perfect. Next, I want to go to my documents because I've included some documents, but I've actually included forms, but I didn't include documents. Documents are the things that the seller provided. So let's go look for those. So here we're going to look for anything that says add next to it and see if it's something that was provided. So here, legal description, Form 17, 22E, those are all things that the seller did for us. 22J and 22K, those are now all part of our offer. And same thing, we're going to assign those signature blocks. There we go. I like things to be a little bit on the tidy side, so I'm going to move some things around just so they're in order. You don't have to do this, but I do find when I'm looking at a transaction that it's nice to kind of have an idea where the forms are going to be numerically. Okay. All right. So now we have pretty much all of our forms that we were planning on. We've got some documents as well, but they're all going to work out. So now the next thing I want to do is look and see what's been signed. So here we've got signature and date. That's great. Initials and date. So I'm going to look at every page. By the way, I also like to look and see. I want to give it a look over and make sure that it looks like I plan on it to look. Generally, it will. It's pretty good about filling in all the blanks that you filled in, but I like to double check. Okay, so we've got initials and dates, initial and dates, initial and date, initial and date. None of those pages have anything going on, so all I'm looking for is initial and date. Financing, I want to make sure it's the right financing, the right down payment, the right number of days. It's all good. Everything I checked is checked. Everything I filled in is filled in. Buyer's initials are in place there. I only did anything on the first page, so I don't have to worry about the rest of it except for the initials. Again, same thing on this one. Everything I checked. Initials are in place. Okay, everything I wrote up is written up. Initials are in place. FERPTA, we don't have to sign anything here. We're just including it because it's important. All right, lead-based paint. This is where we have to do some stuff. So the seller has signed and the seller has initialed. My buyer, their initials were plugged in. They weren't necessarily plugged in on the right place on this one. Interesting. Usually they'll line right up where they need to be. Normally I would want dates as well, but in this case, we don't need them up here. We are going to need them down below. So here we have the buyer's signatures and date, but my signature is not showing, and I need to show up because I'm the buyer broker. So we're going to go here and we are going to go to a sign. We got to choose me. Okay, and I'm going to do a sign here. You notice that already put a date out there for me, so that's great. So now this form is complete as well. But you always want to check to make sure all the signatures and all the initials are done on this form. Okay, because it's two forms and there's a lot of them involved here. The utility is great. It filled in for us. But you'll notice here that my buyer doesn't show up. So we're going to drag and drop a full name field in here for each of them. To just do a text box for the date. So that's today. So there it is. So we've now completed that form. Actually, I need to go back to my lead-based paint because same situation. Okay, so now these forms are complete. We've got our title contingency. It's been initialed. We've got our Pierce County sewer, or excuse me, septic is ready to go. That's good. Inspection, great. The initials are in place. The check boxes and numbers I filled in are in place. That's good. Now we got our Exhibit A. I want to go ahead and slap some initials on this real quick. And so Bob's initials with a date. And get Barb as well. We'll get her initials. Yours is auto date. Okay, that's going to be a date when they sign it. That's the date that will be placed there. And now we're getting down into Form 17. First thing I see is it's incomplete. So we are certainly not going to waive our right to a complete Form 17. Actually, it may not be as incomplete as I thought. We've just got a lot of little tiny, hard to see X's on there, it looks like. So anyway, we're just going to acknowledge receipt and my buyer will have time to review it. And that's been checked. That's already been filled in. We could waive our right to revoke our offer or waive our right to receive a completed seller disclosure statement, but we're not going to mess with that. Again, strategically, there's times when you do that. We weren't doing a strategic offer right now. It's really just more of a getting it together, getting it into transaction desk, authentisign, and getting it over. Next thing I'm going to hit is next. And this is my next step. I hit will actually send it for signatures. And I want my buyer to, I always do the reminder every day at 9 a.m. just in case you've got one of those stubborn clients who doesn't do it immediately and then you have to get it back to them later. At that point, I hit send, and I'm actually going to get an email here shortly that will ask me ask me to sign in several different ways. So anyway, that is the basics. Okay, so I hope that gives you a good idea. There we go. Hopefully that gives you a good idea how to do the basics of writing up your offer. I do want you to contact your manager if you have any questions about any of the language within any of the forms you're dealing with, any of the strategies involved in any of the forms that you're dealing with, etc. But anyway, that gives you a good start. Take care.